When you look at the ASP World Tour schedule every year, every stop is different. It tests their mettle on different strengths. Well, looking back on the year, the start was perfect. Coming to Gold Coast, it was on, and we had 10s, everything you could ask for once we got to the final series. And it was local boys like Mick Fanning and Joe Parkinson that were really the all-stars out there. Kelly Slater also in the final series, and we saw the rise of Michelle Perez. The best part was the final, a rematch with Joel Parkinson and Kelly Slater, where Kelly ends up using priority on him to take the win. You could tell Parko felt that loss. It stung a bit. So after the first event, we had Kelly Slater back as world #1, Joel Parkinson in second, and then you head down to Bells Beach. Yeah, the big theme was just having Kelly Slater and Joel Parkinson go down in round 3. But then there's this sneaky little rookie, Goofyfoot from Santa Cruz, Nat Young, who kept making heats and made his first final ever just in his second event of the season as a rookie. On the other side, it was Adriano de Souza, and Adriano ends up barely beating Nat Young in the final, taking the first win for a Brazilian at a pretty prestigious event. De Souza back in the title race conversation at that time. Event number 3 down in Rio de Janeiro, an interesting one for Adriano. He shows up on his home turf, a place where he's won before, and then he turns into the guy to beat. Everyone on the sand is going for Adriano. The semifinal heat with Gabriel Medina was heavy. Medina wanted the final just as much as Adriano did. It was a close one. De Souza got the nod to make the final series. On the other side of the draw, you've got a guy named Jordy Smith. He still had that momentum and happy-go-lucky flow that he's kind of found this season. He did a couple big air combinations. It was a tight final, and he took a big win. So you come to event number 4 in Fiji, where you saw Kelly Slater kind of rewrite the book on how you're supposed to surf cloud break. When you start seeing Kelly inspired by the surf, it brings out this 6th gear that he can turn on, and he looked freakish. It was a quarterfinal matchup with Sebastian Zietz. Kelly Slater, he put up another perfect heat performance and 2 10s. Kelly was that much better than everybody in that contest. Well, things are getting pretty exciting on the ASP World Tour because we go to Bali, Karamas, which caters to different types of surfing. You're thinking barrels, air combos, hi-fi surfing come to the table, and we got to see it. John Florence is the biggest air ever. I think everyone stopped what they were doing around the world. It's still being deemed as probably the biggest air done in competition, and John shocked the whole planet. Michelle Perez was a major breakthrough. His first final ever on the WCT, and ends up finishing runner-up to Joel Parkinson. And it was Parko's turn to finally get back on the podium, so he's back on top and getting a little bit closer to being in the world title conversation. We've got Tahiti Chopu on tour for a long time, since the late 90s. Fanning on fire again, goes to another final series, keeping that consistency in the world #1 conversation. But then you have Kelly, final, in a very close one against Ace Buchan. Ace, you know, it's clear to say he was the underdog in that heat, but sometimes when he draws Kelly, he's able to find some magic, and it was an emotional win for the Australian. And now we're heading into lower trestles in Southern California. Kelly Slater is back in first, and you look at the stat sheet for Kelly Slater at lower trestles, it looks fake. And then Kelly loses in round 3 to a local boy, Pat Gadauskas. He upset the champ and the world title race in such a massive way. You have Pat move on to the quarterfinals, where he eventually went down to Taj Burrow. When you look at Taj, when you come to lower trestles, it was almost like there was something left that he needed to finish, and he ends up making the final and ends up beating probably the guy to beat in that whole contest, Julian Wilson, and it was kind of shocking. After lowers, you have another flip-flop in the standings between Mick Fanning and Kelly Slater. It's Mick Fanning getting back in his form. The consistency's there. He's on fire, and he ends up making the final against Gabriel Medina. But it was all about Mick Fanning. Old school carves, laid-back combos. Mick Fanning was able to get his first win of the season at a very, very important time. He was already world #1 going into the event, and he finally got a little bit of breathing room on Kelly Slater. After France, you go back to Portugal. You go to a wave called Super Tubos. Slater sent to round 2 to surf against Frederico Moraes, where he ends up going down to the country's favorite son. Mick Fanning ends up making it to the quarterfinals, losing to Kai Otten. And Kai Otten goes on a dream run. He eliminates Parko, from the world title race. He makes the final and ends up having a heat with Nat Young to eventually win. And a tough one for Fanning to lose. He knew he just left the door a little bit open for Kelly to make a comeback at Pipe. So the stage is set. Guys have their careers on the line to re-qualify for the WCT, and ultimately we will crown a world champ, either Kelly Slater or Mick Fanning, here at the Bonsai Pipeline. What other stage would you ever want this showdown to happen?